evening to all distinguished panelists and participants. Bharati Vidyapeeth's Institute of Computer Applications and Management BVICAM, in association with Computational Intelligence Society CIS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Computer Society chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Technology and Engineering Management Society TEMS chapter of IEEE Delhi section, System, Man and Cybernetics SFC Society chapter of IEEE Delhi section, Communication Society of IEEE Delhi section, Consultants Network Affinity CNA Group of IEEE Delhi section, Life Member Affinity LMA Group of IEEE Delhi section, Inter-Society Relations IRS Standing Committee of IEEE Delhi section, Industry Relation and Special Interest Group on Humanitarian Technology, Site Standing Committee of IEEE Delhi section, Region 10 of IEEE with the associations of Computer Society of India, Institute of Information Technology Professionals, IITP, ISTE Delhi section, and IETE Delhi Center as technical collaborator. Welcomes you all today to this IEEE IETE BVICAM technical lecture series on how to keep ourselves relevant in the rapidly changing disruptive ecosystem of the 21st century. According to William Pollard, learning and innovation go hand in hand. The arrogance of success is to think that what you did yesterday will be sufficient for tomorrow. In 21st century, technological disruption is a necessary evil. Industries are facing significant disruption and uncertainty in a continuously rapidly disruptive changing ecosystem. Learning, unlearning, and relearning, skilling, upskilling, and reskilling is becoming the order of the day. To gracefully face the challenges of the rapidly changing disruptive ecosystem, keeping ourselves relevant and useful is the billion-dollar question. This session today is aimed to provide the much needed necessary knowledge required to embrace this highly uncertain future environment while navigating their jobs and career choices. Our expert today, Mr. Anand Sampath sir, will provide a CEO's and a risk expert's perspective to this topic based on global research done by various entities and discuss all its possible dimensions. Before we begin, I would first take this opportunity to welcome amongst us our distinguished panelists for the day. We are privileged to have amongst us a galaxy of experts. First of all, to begin, before beginning this session, I would welcome amongst us our expert speakers, Mr. Anand Sampath sir and Mr. Damandev Sood sir with an e-booking. Welcome to this session, sir.
So much, Ritika.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
Wow, that's cute.
Mr. Anand Sampath sir is the co-founder and CEO of Udbhata Technologies Private Limited, a startup in the GRC products and consulting space. In the past, he has been the Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at an NYSE-listed Indian company. He is a qualified CA, CWA, CIMA from UK and FRM from the US. He has over 2.5 decades of post-qualification experience and has been for over 1.5 decades in the risk and the allied areas. His practical experience spans across various fields like business finance, enterprise risk management, insurance, IFC, compliance, information security, and business continuity management. He has wide exposure to pharma, auto, and now ITES startups. He has also been a valued speaker at many renowned national and international conferences. Along with Sir, we are also privileged to have amongst us Mr. Damandev Sood Sir, who has recently also started his stint as Professor of Practice at Chitkara University. With over 4 decades in the industry and 2 decades in the resilience domain, Sir is a certified international and corporate trainer with over 14,500 hours of training teaching experience and a holder of over 13 copyrights. A CPD member, two of Sir's courses are already CPD certified. He is an author of different published books on resilience and has designed over 40 courses for global entities like BCI, BCS, NICMA, etc. In his professional journey with various IT experts and corporate, he has served various senior and executive roles. He has traveled over 20 plus countries and is a well known international speaker who has served clients in different domains and has won multiple national and global awards and has also been inducted into a BCI Hall of Fame. He's also the chair, PR and P Standing Committee of IEEE Delhi section and an IEEE ambassador. I welcome both our experts to this session and will now request them to kindly begin with the session. Thank you, sir, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ritika. Good evening, everyone. Anand and I are friends, colleagues, professional fellows, and partners in crime. Anand, thank you very much for agreeing to speak to us this evening from this platform. IEEE Delhi section welcomes you once again.
Everyone.
The times are changing, times are testing and challenging also. The question comes to mind, how would you like to define how is life changing today in your own words, Anand? And please also take time to talk a little more about yourself
Thanks,
for
Daman.
the benefit of our audience.
Yeah. And again, very good evening on behalf of, Udbata and Daman to the entire audience here. Thanks, Dr. Ritika, for having us today. Thank you, IEEE Delhi and BVICAM. I think these are pioneering this session today, but there is a lot of help that is coming in from other universities and bodies. And I also see a lot of co-panelists. So very good evening to all of you. And thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure. Just getting back to Daman's question, I think I had suggested the topic to Daman and he said, okay. And immediately I became excited because the topic was not something that was easy to think about and speak, but it is something that every one of us is possibly experiencing today, including me as the founder of a startup with about 25, 30 years of experience. Believe me, whether it is my consulting clients or my own employees, I say that anything which is more than 3 years old may not be relevant anymore today if you want to refer it for anything that you want to do in the future. So life is changing that fast, excepting for probably science, the rules of science which don't change or the rules of math which don't change. But anything that involves decision making, anything that involves, the way we work or the way we will work in future, I think everything is changing as we, see things around us. And a large portion of my presentation today will try to introduce you the topic. 1 hour can't do justice to all of this. But I will try to find some way to get you a starting point as to how you may want to think about navigating this uncertainty. And I hope if I've achieved that, then that is good enough. But Daman, I think to specifically answer your question, whether it is our own business, our own venture, our own startup, whether it is the priorities of our clients, whether it is the challenges that we are trying to handle in terms of our own team's capability building, understanding what is it that we have to, as Dr. Ritika said, upskill, reskill, unlearn, relearn, right? New technologies that we are sure that we have to be aware of, whether it is AI, whether it is sustainability as a topic. I think all these things are dynamically changing, right? So we are all jointly figuring out our way, I would say that. But the future is kind of, so someone has written something in the future and we are all moving towards it. I guess that's how it's happening. Whether we are playing the role of the driver or whether we are playing the role of the follower. I just think that there are certain things which are writings on the wall and we should be able to recognize that, as we traverse today's conversations.
Would you like to share your slides also, Anand?
Yeah. I will get started with, what I wanted to say. And Daman, please feel free to interject, and everyone else on the call, please feel free to also, put in your thoughts. Uh, Daman or someone else can ask them on your behalf, and I'll be very happy to answer them, right? So the objective here is to see if we can gather some insights that can help us move forward. I think that's the primary goal here. In terms of the path to today's 1 hour session, I think we should recognize that life is changing very rapidly. The future is still unfolding, right? And in the context of a future unfolding, how do we think about it? And how do we move forward? And then how do we keep ourselves relevant? I guess these are just like the 4 or 5 placeholders. And feel free to, explore this along with me today. And feel free to ask any question that seems to be something that is on your mind, not on the slide or not talked about. Just feel free to do that. So I'll get started. I'm going to start with, I don't know if you should call it Rashtrabhasha Hindi, but Kal, Aaj or Kal, right? And I think it's a good segue. The topic as we go forward is going to get a lot more dense and complex. So I'm going to start in a light way and then start slowly building up the complexity. But all of us understand and love our mothers or grandmothers' cooking, right? And all of us know that, we, if we are cooks, we believe we are cooks. Our spouses, our sisters, our siblings, brothers, none of them will be able to meet that match. We all know that, right? And maybe 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10 will say, yes, we are as good as them. But a majority of them will say, possibly no, right? I'm sure you agree with that. If someone vehemently disagrees, please put up your hand and you should be felicitated for that. But I think the question to ask is that something that bothers us? Does it bother us that we are probably not as good as our mother or grandmother, right? Is it bothering us today? Now, the answer is probably no, right? We are okay. We know that we are not probably as good as that, and we don't really need to be good there, right? Great. So, oh, no, as in, I'm assuming that you are disagreeing and you're a great cook. So, congratulations there. Um, the question that is probably worth asking is, are your grandparents or sometimes parents, like for example, my father, right? Are they comfortable with day-to-day technology as much as you are? And there, I think we've got to pause and think that how many of us have noticed our grandparents or parents struggling with technology. And these are very simple things, right? Paytm में कहाँ पे है, button कहाँ पे है, क्या register करना है, OTP, right? All of these things are very basic stuff for folks like us, but sometimes starts getting difficult, right? Once the regular phone, digital phone became a smartphone, things started getting very complex, right? So the question here is that uh, can they avoid totally uh, getting connected with technology? Possibly not, right? It's quite possible, especially if they are on their own, right? And they're not dependent on either of us, uh, us as in you or me. They would need something to keep things going. The whole world has changed digital in many ways, right? And therefore, it becomes very important that at least a few things you might want them to be aware of. It could be just doing basic transactions on a Swiggy or a Paytm. It could be picking up a video call, making some calls, maybe a few apps here and there, for ordering medicines and stuff like that. I'm just taking the just at the I'm just scratching the surface here. But as you start wanting to engage more and more, you find that digital is the only way to do it a lot more easier, right? And how difficult does it become if they are not technology savvy, right? So there is definitely some level of difficulty. Now just look at how things are progressing. So it didn't matter if we didn't know or didn't know how to cook as well as our grandparents or parents, but it does matter that our parents or grandparents understand technology, right? And during our generation, things have changed. This we all understand this. We all know we are all tech savvy, right? We've involved our parents at times, our grandparents at times. At times, we may not have involved them, so they may not have got caught onto it. Now, just take this forward and look at yourself in another 20, 30 years, right? What will matter for us in the future, right? What will be critical to learn? What will be critical to adapt? It's very important for us to uh, think about this, right? As the change happens, sometimes you've got to learn, but sometimes you have the benefit of intelligence that can help you think about the future, right? And what is okay for us not to learn or know. Just like the way there are certain things that necessarily you need to know, right? What are the things according to you that may not be, I mean, that's okay even if we don't get to know, right? So I think these are very important questions to ask. And now I'm moving away from basic cooking to life crisis, careers, I'm sorry, and how we might want to look at ourselves and for our children in the future. A very, very important, I would say, um, intersection today of whatever, we have been given, both from technology and the way that businesses operate today. And we'll spend the next 45 minutes to 60 minutes looking at different facets and seeing if we can construct something, along the way. Is that good? Can we get started?
Yeah, great.
So,
While
yeah,
Anand,
go ahead.
that was a slip of tongue when you said crisis instead of career. But career is a good crisis in hand today. We all have.
Yes,
So this is very timely discussion that you're having for us. Thank you.
great. Yes. So I will start from the fundamentals, and we must have seen different versions of this for ourselves, right? My idea is to communicate how life is changing for us very rapidly. See, we were not in the 1800s, 1900s, 1960s, right? We are today, right? Some of us are probably 1960s, but we are all here today, and we are the beneficiaries of, the Industrial Revolution 1, which was all about how mechanization happened, the Henry Fords coming off the motor vehicles, etc. We are beneficiaries of electrification, Industrial Revolution 2. We are beneficiaries of Industrial Revolution 3. And right now, what we all talk about is here in 4.0, right? And 4.0 builds on digital. 4.0 builds on a lot of things that connects digital to Revolution 2, Revolution 1 as well, right? And we'll get to that in a second. But what is important here is how these changes are actually occurring. Uh, if you see from the agricultural revolution that we all are familiar with as a topic to the industrial revolution, which is where we see here on the graph, it took mankind about 8,000 years to get there, right? And from the industrial revolution to, let us say, an invention which is very, very powerful and talked about everywhere, the light bulb, right? It took another 120 years. From the light bulb to the first man landing on the moon in 69, it took mankind 90 years to get there. From the moon landing to, let us say, the World Wide Web that was first introduced, and everything changed after that, right? The whole book about the world is flat by Friedman came because of the introduction of the World Wide Web. That just took 22 years. And today, when we talk about you know moving ahead in terms of not just AI but bionics, and then the human genome getting sequenced, that took us just 9 years. So you can imagine the pace at which the changes are happening. And even now, from today to, let us say, the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, the pace at which things are changing is so fast that we can only understand it in hindsight, right? It's very difficult for us to see how things are unfolding for us going forward. And that's not just happening to, these are not just historical events. With each event, the way each of us are living our lives or have lived our lives during those times and would live their lives or our lives afterwards is also changing, right? And they are getting changed for the better. They are having their own elements of success, benefits. They could also have their elements of side effects, but that's not the goal for today. The goal for today is to understand that life is rapidly changing, right? So let me move forward, if there are no questions at this point in time, to what exactly, where are we today in terms of the industrial revolution? So what is this industrial revolution for, right? I'm just going to get to that in a minute. Just feel free to pause and ask any questions that comes to your mind. But I'm just going to continue. So when you look at 4.0, a lot of it is digital. A lot of it is building on the digital that was done starting from the World Wide Web, right? And you can see a host of elements that comprise 4.0. Many of us understand that these are things that we use nowadays on a day-to-day basis. I'm sure that there isn't going to be anyone on this call today who doesn't understand most of what is on this slide, right? Um, it's where we are living today. This is where we are currently. This is where we are part of, right? We are all part of this 4.0 today. And for each of the elements that are shown here, I've just put across some samples of what these could constitute. If you look at AR and wearables, right? Some of us must have got access to VR headsets, etc. But every one of us has seen or worn a smartwatch, right? And the smartwatches are as low as a few thousand rupees nowadays, right? And if someone wants to have it for the purpose of managing time, managing health, there are so many features that it allows. So a lot of the AR wearables are not old to us; they are all known to us. When it comes to cloud computing, I think there are two variants. One is just softwares that run on the cloud, uh, and I want to use Google Suite while you have all of the others which are also on the cloud and offerings are there. But everyone uses Gmail, everyone uses a Yahoo Mail, right? So it's something that is that we are part of, and we've been part of it for quite some time. And very recently, something like ChatGPT that uses tons and tons of computing power, right? Which is enabled by a lot of these organizations such as OpenAI. They provide you the opportunity to do a lot of what is written down their big data analytics, but come out with it was made possible because supercomputing at some level at the background has been introduced, right, via the cloud. So that is something which we are all again very familiar with. Mobile devices, I don't have to talk about. IoT platforms, we have smart vehicles, we have smart homes. So when I say smart vehicles, what I mean is, you have vehicles that start, making noises if you have vehicles going close by it. You have vehicles where the entire problem in the vehicle can be tested by just running a software. So your mechanic puts in, a device that essentially checks if everything is in order, your brake, your electricals, your wiring, all of that is in order, right? And there's always this connect between the objects and the information, right? So that's how IoT has come into play. And the same thing happens with your smart homes, right? So at the touch of a button on your phone, or you can switch on a Netflix, or you can, possibly switch off a bulb or switch on a fan, right? Location detection, again, all of us understand. So I'm not going to go through each of this in detail, But as you keep going through this and scanning through this, you will suddenly realize that we are actually living in the middle of 4.0, right? And 4.0 is also changing, right? It's very important for us to be able to assimilate this information that we are in the midst of a very rapidly changing industrial revolution. The others are also improving. It's not that your mechanical and your electrical revolutions are not improving, but this is going at a super pace, right? And a lot of the stuff that we read about, so you're reading, if you're reading on your mobile, then you're basically reading what is sent to you, right? Then you're essentially a victim of the last line there, the last item called marketing management, right? So you're browsing some content on your mobile, and then suddenly you will find that all items that are similar to what you browse is what comes into your your browsing screen, right? So these are again because of the fact that there is profiling carried out for the browser or of the browser. Could be you, could be me. And if I'm going to look at, like Daman said, crisis, then suddenly I'm going to find all messages about crisis coming in, right? A couple of days I looked into what was happening with the airline, right? So we had Boeing getting into a bit of a trouble about 3 6 months back, and then suddenly I find everything is about Boeing, right? That comes to me. The reality is that it just picks up, and keeps pushing in information that it thinks I'm interested in, right? So that's how life is, and we are all living in the midst of it. It's very important to recognize this. It's very important to understand who's controlling what. It's very important to take charge of technology rather than end up allowing the technology to take charge of you. I think that's the important context for us to keep while we are on this slide. And the other thing is, like I said, it's extremely important for us to understand that what we are experiencing today is also rapidly changing. Right. So, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm just moving forward.
Thanks, Anand. Point that comes to mind is that it's changing. It's changing at a very fast speed. So please take us deep into this journey of future that is changing fast, and also touch upon points with respect to India specifically, maybe the strengths and weaknesses that India has, or specific features that India has around this changing life and changing life at a fast speed.
Gladly, Daman. So before that, I think it's also important to understand what's the global context, because all of us understand that every country is, very intricately connected with the other, right?
Right.
India does have one very, very big advantage. I don't know if someone can guess what it is. In terms of the interconnectedness and dependency. Can anyone in the group guess? I'm not going to talk about it right away, but if someone wants to wager a guess and put it in, I'm very happy to look at it and congratulate them if they got it right. There is one unique advantage that India enjoys compared to many other nations, if not all nations in the world, about its interconnectedness or dependency of businesses with other countries, right? Yeah. Demographic is a very broad statement. Youth population is a very broad statement, and we will talk about it. But can you talk about it more specifically? What about demographics do you think is what it is? Tech advancement? No, no, Daman, that's not that. It's not tech advancement, or at least that is not what I want to communicate. So, yeah, so all of you are talking about something that you are in the middle of. Great. But that is not what I was wanting to say. Let's move forward and uncover this as we move forward, right?
Great, great. Yeah.
Yeah. Please update. Okay, great. So I think firstly, it's very important for us to understand how the future is unfolding for all of us in the world, right? And when we say future is unfolding, we are only talking primarily about employment, work, right? So it could be employment with an organization. It could be somebody like me and Daman, who are consultants of founders of our startups. It could be anybody else who's associated, say the government itself, for example, right? And what this particular graph shows is the number of people who have said that in their organization, this is what they are focusing on, or this is what is driving what their organization is doing today, right? This is cutting across sectors, this is cutting across countries, and this is cutting across the nature or size of the business, right? What they are saying, just give me a second. Yeah. So 86.2%, for example, right, of of all the organizations that were surveyed, and I'm not able to get a number here, but the source is there, that it would be a few thousands for sure, right, across the globe, have said that their biggest driver for whatever they are doing in their organization is because of increased adoption of new and frontier technologies. So if X hours of time of an organization was currently being invested, right? 86% say that they are definitely investing in this as their top priority, right? Or if you look at it, 86% of the surveyors said this is in their key drivers, right? And as you go through this and as you start understanding what is the reason for which their choices of work, their choices of business, the choices of products, the choices of service are being made or are changing or are going to change, right? It's because of all of this, right? As you can go down from initially, you see they're all on the digital side, right? Then as you start moving down, it starts becoming more on the social side, the environment side, right? So you have the first two, which is clearly digital, then the next three or four, which is entirely on this new topic. And I don't know how many of you have been introduced to this topic called ESG, right, which stands for environmental, social, and governance. Essentially, philosophy which believes in sustainable growth, right? Looking at all the three elements of environment, social, and governance for organizations and around the organizations, which means their communities and their business partners and their value chain, right? And then as you go down, you start looking at business issues, right? You have supplier related issues, you have, operations related issues. And then as you go down further, you start seeing about people, right? You say aging populations. There are so many companies today who could be 50 years, 25 years, 40 years, 50 years. I'm not talking about the ones who crossed 100 years, right, in existence. All of them are at a stage where they know that they have excellent employees, extremely loyal, right, but possibly unable to take on the next set of changes that are happening in the world, right? And they find that this whole challenge of getting in new talent into the company is going to create some problem, because the new talent is not going to be as loyal or as understanding. When I say understanding, I mean knowledgeable, right? As they were, because they've been there through the company for their entire careers. Um, at the same time, they're going to bring in some fresh thoughts that the incumbents cannot challenge, right? So it's a very, very difficult balancing act that HRs of companies are doing today, right? So you're going to find that aging populations are going to start having a challenge for organizations and therefore for nations as well. And then it starts moving towards the external challenges, including geopolitical and pandemic, etc. Right? So if you can just cast your eyes on all of this, right, for a minute, and understand that any organization that says that they are doing a few things, right, they are hiring for a certain set of skills, they are looking at making these changes, or they're focusing on these areas, right? The drivers are going to be most of these, if not some of these, right? It's important, very important to keep catching the drivers, right? Because it's the drivers that then open up the trends going forward, right? So I hope you have this broad sense. My intention here is not to,
Yeah.
discuss it very, very threadbare, but to give you a view as to, how things might be changing for all of us,
Yeah.
including for me and including for all of you, right? The document that is posted there is an excellent document. I would say excellent. And my request is please ask for it or download it and read every page. There are sections specifically for India. Please go through that. A lot of that is also being covered here, but it's something that's really going to open all of our eyes. It has opened my eye as well, but the same thing could happen to all of you.
Yeah.
Now, if this is the case, right, the document also goes on to say what is changing, right? And if you see this graph, what this is telling is what are all the kinds of tasks or acts where employment is increasing, and what are all those drivers because of which employment is reducing, right? And if, let us say, you're going to choose a career or you're going to spend some time in understanding a certain topic, or you want to be in the right place at the right time, which is a very important, task that all of us will have, whether we are businessmen or students or young professionals. It's always good to understand what is those areas where this is going to go up. And when I looked at this, while this is a global report, my understanding is a lot of this is also similar in India, right? So whether you're looking at within India or outside India, I think this is something that is really worth it. So if you look at the space on the green transitions, the ESG, right, climate change, all of those related elements, demographic dividends and stuff like that, that's where the greatest changes are happening. Uh, New jobs are getting created there. If you trace the lead indicators could be trainings, right? So you see the kind of trainings that are out there today in the public domain, you will start seeing on these topics. You see startups that are getting funded for their ventures, you will see there in this topic, right? So what happens is you have enough of lead indicators for you to understand कि कहाँ पे हवा, is changing towards what direction. So that
Yeah.
is definitely something that is worth, studying carefully. uh, it's not something you can do overnight. You just have to start observing, and you will start realizing that, start just connecting the dots, seeing what kind of, events are happening more often. Why are they coming out? Where is investments happening? What areas they are happening in? And you will start realizing that that's where the future is going. Am I clear? Am I making sense? Is there anyone who has a question at this point in time? Or else I will just continue to move forward.
Please continue, Anand. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
So while
It's
people,
eye opener. There is no doubt about it. And as you had said, that 1 hour is not going to be enough. So we understand that the seed only are being sown now. It's encouraging us to think for sure, even if not providing the solutions immediately.
we
Good
will we
discussion.
will have something that we also provide as a path, not a solution, definitely to think forward.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think while that is happening to the world outside, right? Or that's happening to the jobs outside. That's happening to the trends that companies and industries are facing outside. What's happening to the workforce globally, right? That's also very important. We now have Gen Ys and Gen Zs largely into the pool. All of you are Gen Zs. Most of you are Gen Zs, I'm sorry, right? So most of you are Gen Zs and you are in the pool, right? You're going to be getting into the employment pool shortly if you're already not. And Gen Zs, believe me, are very, very different from the others. They're very different in multiple ways. And if you look at a few things here, I think that the four biggest set of changes that's going to shape how work is going to be done by talent in the future are in those four broad buckets. Demographics, and a lot of you talked about demographics in different ways. My answer is still not here, but I will talk about that answer towards the end. Individual choices, tech adoption, and competitive drivers, right? So on each of these buckets, there are a few elements that I would like to cover. The rest of it in detail, again, I would urge you to look at this excellent document by, uh, called Human Age Workforce Trends. And this was done in collaboration with the World Economic Forum again. So they are all talking to one another, right? So the reports are talking to one another, but they have been compiled by separate research organizations, right? And if you take shifting demographics, the first point that I think is very, very important, and we see these trends. So I'm going to take some trends and talk about it, right? Um, if you see employment expectations, I do not know how many of you are already either experiencing it or you are causing the experience for your organizations. But I think if you're a Gen Z employee, you don't care about a 9 to 6, right? You don't care about sitting on your desk the whole day and typing away on a computer or working in a particular thing. You care about outcomes. You care about, as long as the job is done, I really don't think that my boss should worry so much, right? You care about being cool, right? You care about doing multitasking. And, I come from a place where I know that even scientifically, there is nothing called multitasking, right? But we all believe, and yeah, we care about our growth and multitasking, absolutely. So, those ideologies are yours, right? If there's a Gen Z guys here and most of you are, those are yours, right? You're cool about this. You're not so concerned about probably leaving a job uh, 6 months later, 1 year later because you're bored, right? And join another, job because you think that's better than this, right? You're not worried about not being out of a job, right? All these things were not there 15 years, 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago also, right? They're very big changes. And along with those changes, the way work is offered, the way work is taken, the way work gets done starts getting changed. And I'm sure you would, understand where I'm going, right? But on the other hand, there are so many issues that they care about, right? So you look at what's happening in Google, right, today. A lot of protests for certain things that very strongly, they believe about. My daughter is in Ashoka University in Delhi, right? And the students come out with a rally every second week or third week about issues that they care about, and they don't really care about what the college. They're not worried about the fact that they could be pulled up by the administration. So the Gen Z guys are very, very different, and it's very important for both the employers, if I could use employer as a surrogate, the bosses, if I could use boss as the surrogate, or the employees themselves, right? To understand what this means to the kind of tasks that they're willing to take up. At the end of the day, they're all working with or for an organization to achieve the objective, right? So how does that get achieved? And I think those conversations are starting to happen in a very, very different ways, right? And it's very important for us to understand that that's how things can go. In the US, people like Elon Musk have said there is no use of even a college degree. हम लोग मतलब रगड़ रगड़ के we are trying to get our degrees out. We work extremely hard. If something gets left out, we want to follow it up and close it, complete our pending credits, etc., and make sure that we have a degree, right? So on one hand, there is an entire, historical, I would say, experience that suggests finish what you started properly and move on. And then there's this entire new thinking that comes out by, very, very influential stalwarts, idols for that matter, that say probably what you're doing is not, it doesn't really matter, right? Kind of a thing. So it's very important even for all of us to be very clear about what does all of this mean, right? Increasingly, we've seen, in our own friend circle, our peers, our families, that we are pretty cool with dropouts. We are pretty cool with, challenges of other kinds that could be there. We have become more tolerant on those sides. Um, and there's nothing good or bad about it. It's just that the way it is, right? And it's very important to capture those demographics. And that is not just about the personalities, it's also about the conscious way in which things is getting done, right? So There used to be a 6-day week. There is a 5-day week today. Generally, in Europe, they've carried out trials to determine that 4-day weeks are more ideal, possibly most ideal. Even in US, they're thinking about this, right? And so that they can bring in that work-life balance in a very, very different way. And how does all of this unfold? What does it mean again to the future of work? I think each company will have to think about it for themselves, but there will be a general consensus, right? The general consensus today is we want to do a 5-day week. The general consensus is that, we are okay with, say, flexible timing. The general consensus is, it doesn't matter if you work from home, right? So those things are all getting normalized. They're all general consensus. 10 years back, we wouldn't have even thought about this, forget about talking about this, right? So you get what I'm trying to say here. And the same thing happens with tech adoption, the same thing happens with, the competitive drivers. So I, encourage you to look at this document. It's again a very powerful document. And on both sides, students, young professionals, as well as parents, colleges, organizations, right? I'd like you to look at it. It's going to open up a lot of avenues for you to design your work-based policies accordingly or accept work accordingly, right? Depending on which side of the table you are. So with that, I'll continue. If there are any questions, please continue to ask, or comments and inputs are also welcome. Now coming to what Daman said, so what does all this mean for India? And if all of these things are changing so rapidly, what's happening in the India space today as we speak, right? So maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, if I had cleared a CA, right, I would probably have, I would be in the top 5 or 7% because that used to be the passing range. If I got an 85%, 90% mark in my 10th class, I would feel happy about it, right? But today, even if students get 95, 99%, and I'm not talking about 10th and 12th, okay, they still feel they are lagging behind, right? Now, a lot of this is coming in because of the way demography itself is changing, right? The opportunities are growing. The supply and demand is probably growing faster or better, right? Both in terms of quantity and quality. And suddenly you find that India as a nation today, 65% are under the age of 35. And the demographic dividend that we are all talking about will at least last till 2041, right? Because till 2041, India will have a fantastic opportunity to take advantage of every one of its talent that is available for it for anything that they want to do, right? Whether it is on the business side, whether it's on the social side, right? And at that point in time, at its peak, it's going to be 59%, probably the largest of any nation, and definitely the largest in Asia. And you can see some of these countries who are, so take Korea, for example, take China, for example, take Japan, for example, even Brazil, right? These countries are what we used to call as Diggaj, right? So they used to be the top in terms of the way that their GDP, etc., were growing at some point in time. And we all know where we stand today. We are probably fourth, right? We've just pipped UK to be on the fourth. And very clearly, UN themselves have come out that in the next 10 years, globally, for every job that, every one employee that gets hired, or for every 4 employees that get hired, one of them will be from India, right? So you're going to be adding 25%, close to 25% of additions over the next 10 years is going to be talent from India. Now, what this graph tells you is that India's, uh, demographic dividends has started somewhere in 2020, will last all the way up to 2025. And the average benefit is going to be 37 years, right? So it's one of the best periods for all of us. But along with it comes a lot of supply of talent, which means there's more competition. Along with it comes a lot of demand for high quality education, providers, which puts a lot of pressure on institutes, both government as well as private. And along with it comes a lot of competitiveness, pressure, stress, right? For the students of today, for the young professionals of tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So it's good for us to again keep this in mind. It's very good to understand how things are unfolding for us. So if the parents felt it was not that difficult and they understand why it is difficult, this could be part of that reason, right? For our kids today. So may I continue? Any questions at this point in time? I think we are good, right?
Anand. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just looking at the time also, Anand. So
Sure,
we are
sure,
within
sure.
into the last 10 minutes of slotted time.
Will do.
Requesting Dr. Ritika, can we take extra 10 minutes, please?
Yes, sir, sure.
Okay, so
Thank you.
Anand, please, 20 minutes roughly we should look for to.
Okay, done,
Yeah,
done, done.
great.
So I
Thank you
think
very
with that context, let's start looking at the prognosis for India.
much.
These are some statistics that came in again from the World Economic Forum that talks about specific jobs in India, right? So what this is saying is that in the coming years, right, and the immediate recent past, what has been the kind of change? So you can see for topics like environment, social, and governance, which is largely sustainability, climate change, green. The word green is used as a prefix for a lot of areas. The demand has gone up as high as 61%, right? So those are the areas where companies are investing. Those are the areas where investments are going into as far as India is concerned, and so on and so forth. As you can see, some of the other topics right there. And if I talk about technology specifically, and I think most of the students on the call today are from the technology background. So there is an articulation specifically about where jobs are being created in the last few years. And this trend is going to continue for the next few years, starting from big data analytics to encryption and cybersecurity to digital platforms. Remember, this is all India, right? So today, if you are in this space, demand and supply mismatches could automatically take care of your career, right? If you are not in this place or you are not part of this wave, you might have to compete with a lot more of your peers who are in that space. It just doesn't mean that the other jobs are not there. It just means that it's going to be a lot more easier if you are in this space for you to get pulled into by demand, right? And if you look at the jobs that changed in the last 3 years, right, minus to plus, see from down. So you look at secretaries, administrative assistants, bookkeeping, accounting clerks, data entry clerks, accountants and auditors, general managers and operations heads, right? Business and service administrator managers, they're all minus, 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 right? So they're all people whose positions have gone. Either they have been, that role itself has been killed, or they would have been reskilled or upskilled to something else within their organizations. And you can see on the top two or three project managers, BD professionals, and the hot topic of today, AI/ML, right? Specialists. So there is where a lot of the job offers are gone to, right? So again, it's a question of understanding what is going away, and you don't want to be part of what is going away, and figuring out if you want to be part of what is coming your way. And I think that's the thought process that is very important for us to keep in mind. So what is happening therefore to the schools, right? So all of us, right from the Three Idiots days or even earlier, I think we always believe that there are two kinds of learnings, right? One is learning on the basis of what is offered to you through the curriculum. The second is what the people generally go to US for, which is application-based learning. There seems to be somebody, on the, if you could just check on the,
Yes, sir.
no worries, and then I can, thank you so much. So what the OECD group, right? The OECD is a confederation of about a dozen or two of countries India is not part of OECD, but primarily Europe, Eastern Asia, right? And they have hypothesized how the education in the future is going to be. And they have provided four scenarios, right? So the first is to say that schooling and schools will continue in the future, right? But they will be an extension, so they will continue to do what they're doing, but they will start changing what they're offering to be in line with the current offering. Uh, is it possible for us to
Dr.
mute
Ritika,
on and
may
then
I
I can just
request?
speak again?
We are muting.
No worries.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
So I guess that we are lucky there. We managed to check that in. So one is school is continues and it basically changes form shape. The second is education itself is outsourced. So it starts becoming a lot more, I would say, as a service through agencies, through consultants, through organizations. People take their own time to learn. We already understand the concept of homeschooling, right? But then the manner in which education is received or imparted, we all know, a lot of startups in the tech spaces have come in. So the way that you assimilate your knowledge, do you really need to go to a school, right? If there is a possibility for you anyway to write the exam in confidence, right, and then clear it, do you really need to go to school? So that's one scenario. Now they are not advocating that A or B or C or D or in this case 1, 2, 3, 4 should be done. They are saying it's possible. They really don't know what it is, right? So for us also, in the way that we think about our futures, we think about our children's futures. I think we have to keep the options open to say that there is a possibility that this is how the world is going to move. Not necessarily our country, but definitely maybe the European countries, right? Schools otherwise could be a learning hub, which means that I do most of my stuff at home, but I just go to the school to get certain validations done. And the fourth is to basically be on your own and you just learn as you go. You don't need to have any formal, education as such. And as you start your experiential learning, you probably continue to build on your knowledge, right? So they've kind of thought about all the four scenarios, and there is an entire document that talks about what does it mean for the schools, what does it mean for the government, what does it mean for the parents and children. And I'm not going to dwell down to that, but it is important to know that in another 10, 15, 20 years, any of these models can start opening up, right? Now, when I move down to India, right? Right now, there is no authoritative literature that summarizes all of how India's future is going to be. There are a lot of efforts that are happening in multiple places. There are interventions in colleges and schools that are happening. And primarily along these four topics, this gentleman, Aurobindo Saxena, he's one ed tech startup founder. So he's given his views based on his experiences with interacting with a lot of institutions in India, as well as all the work that is happening with educational institutions on four broad themes, right? On the theme of the school, what are the changes that are currently happening? And if you look at this, are you able to see, some of these things in your own life, in your own children's life, in your own colleges at this moment? Is something that you can think about, right? Starting from digital integration in early learning, all the way up to, edtech platforms being directly or indirectly used as an ancillary education, right? We've talked about maybe the first robo teacher in Kerala, possibly, right? Also, that has been talked about. So the world is changing, and we are in the middle of that change. I think it's very important to note that we do not have any authoritative, view of the future for India. But I think that view has to be co-developed using the views of all of these experts and our own learnings and all the efforts that I would say government is putting, and put them all together possibly in this bucket, right? So if this is all happening, then what does it mean to us? So, as students and as young professionals, how can we think about our future? How do we think about a career that we may have started, but we may need to reinvent, right? So I've found a very, very appropriate article from HBR that gives you a step-by-step path to understand how this may happen. And it resonates very closely with the way that I would have wanted to articulate this from my own experience. And therefore, I pulled this up, for you. And please have a look at it. But here is what it is in the next 5-7 minutes. Explore a range of options that is available with you. So if you are a student, what areas you want to study in? If you are a young professional, what career options are unfolding in front of you, right? Look at all of this. The sources is going to be again from the World Economic Forum and all of the other reports. And I'll talk about certain other things in the next, few minutes. And in that option, please also think of the unthinkable. And when I say unthinkable, if someone says, that I want to become an artist, right? Uh, think of the scenario where there is a possibility that artists may go out of work or out of jobs because of, say, digital disruption, right? So if I am in the hotel industry or if I am in the hospitality industry, think of a scenario where hospitality industry may entirely get changed because of, let us say, robotics, or because of yet another pandemic that comes and wipes out, let us say, hospitality industry. So it's good to have those scenarios in mind, and the same thing is also for options that you have, right? So if you say that I want to give myself 5 years to do these three things, right? Please today itself put in writing that what if that doesn't happen in 5 years? What are you going to do next, right? Otherwise, you're just going to invest time and probably head out in a direction that might not get you anywhere, right? So it's always good to set time-based limits and triggers for whatever that you want to do, right? If you say I want to explore acting, if you say that I want to explore art, I want to explore, the fine arts, music, dance, etc., that's fine. Give yourself a time, and if you don't, think you're getting there, then have a plan B decided today itself, and that's going to be really, really valuable, right? The next is imagine your best possible future. So while you have a range of options that you might think about the best possible future that you may want. And in doing so, please challenge the assumptions that you're making about yourself. What this means is you may say that, okay, I'm not an open person. I'm not a people person. I'm a closed person. So maybe I should choose these kind of roles, right? Or I'm a person who cannot be a manager. I'm probably going to be, a specialist, and I'm not going to be a generalist, right? And immediately what happens is you're going to cut down your choices, right, of what you can be. So challenge those assumptions. While it's very important for you to choose the right, the best possible future, but please challenge the assumptions that you may have about yourself, and definitely leverage your skills and passion, right? So if you are physically fit, think of how you can leverage that. If you're mentally very agile and extremely good at communication, think about how you may want to leverage that, right? If you have certain passions and you want to combine work with passion, think about how you want to leverage that. And I think it's very important to keep thinking about this, and it changes, right? So you may start off with certain skills, certain passions, and as you keep growing, and as you keep experiencing and you keep knowing more, you might want to revisit that every 5 or 10 years. So feel free to do that too, right? Capture your inspirational moments, construct personal highlights. It's very important to put stuff in writing so that you're able to see what it is. We've heard about Jim Carrey, right? Who used to have that check of $1 million or something in his purse. And he said that the day I become successful, I'm going to encash this check, right? And he became successful in the end, and he used that as positive motivation. So those are your inspirational moments, that it could be a good moment, it could be a bad moment, it could be a great thought, right? A source of inspiration. Capture those inspirational moments and make sure that you're constructing your personal highlights. So you would have to keep noting down, this is where I'm going to keep getting better at, or I'm getting better at, or these are evidences of the fact that I'm doing well or I need to improve, right? Use your free time very wisely, and definitely continue to keep exploring new arenas and emerging trends. Things are changing on a daily basis, right? So please keep on the lookout. Make sure you have a standard set of sources. and you keep referring to those sources, go for the most believable sources. Nothing that comes on your mobile. Take a good newspaper, subscribe to some good set of libraries or sources where you get authentic information, and make sure that you use that to guide your choices, right? Build capabilities that are relevant to your future self, and this could be done by practicing certain of those skills that you need in your current role, right? Or some of it could be that you have to do it in a surrogate way, that you build your own projects and do it. Definitely, online programs and courses are welcome, and they should be welcome. And nothing beats a mentor or a coach, right? So some of us have that mentoring or coaching when we want to get into a college. But I think that once you get into anything, your college or work life, continuing with a mentor or coach is gold, right? It would at least give you 5 years or 10 years of your 40, 50-year career. It's going to advance it by at least, that 10 more years. And you understand the value of 10 years, right? At the end of that 40 years. Start small. So you can think big, but start small. Focus on changes that can happen very quickly. You take a very big target, you may not be able to achieve it in a certain time frame that you have. Break it down into smaller tasks. Get those tasks done on a daily basis, and start making decisions or changes where you will not have a regret, right? One of the things that I had as a personal regret was that when I decided which place to go to, should I move to commerce or should I move to science, right? When I was in my 10th, I looked at my dad and I said, I want to become a CA. And I finally became a CA. But then personally, I regret, because once you get into commerce, it's very difficult to come back to a science stream, right? But if you move to a science stream, doing a CA after doing, intermediate or, plus two in science is not a problem, right? So some of these moves that you make, you should end up not having a regret, right? So you should be able to allow yourself to make those choices later if it happens, and think about making as few regret based moves and as many no regret moves, if you understand what I mean, right? And finally, if you're choosing to do this, you have to give up a lot of things that could be baggage for you. Um Personally, uh, turn on the video. Is there a message for me there, or can I continue?
Continue, please.
Okay. So be ruthless with what you want to leave behind. Please don't get, distracted. Please make sure that all the spare time is used very wisely, even if it is to save, your energy, take rest. Please do that wisely. Please use all your calendar slots wisely. Please don't block your time ahead thinking that it's something good is going to come out unless and until you're extremely sure that something is, right? So please value your time. At the end of the day, all of us have what is called as 4,000 weeks. There is actually a book about this, 4,000 weeks. When you look at it in numbers, it means nothing. So that's as 70, 80 years of your life, right? So 4,000 weeks is all every one of our lives are. So please use your calendar slots very wisely, right? So that's about, the session today. I'm just going to take the last 5 minutes, Daman and Dr. Ritika, with your permission.
Yes,
And I want
please.
to make sure that my experiences are also communicated. So there are 4 topics that applies to every one of us, working professionals, students who are deciding about the future, right? And founders and entrepreneurs such as me, who's also working on behalf of our companies, right? Could be Mr. Daman himself. 4 qualities that essentially we should continue to have and pursue. And I really believe that we should follow this. The first is perseverance, very, very important to persevere. And the second is networking and collaborating. And I'll talk about each of this in a second. Third is managing risks. And the last is adapt or innovate, right? Very, very important learnings for me through my entrepreneurial journey, but extremely important for all of us as student journey, because things are changing very, very, very rapidly on a daily basis. So you always have to think about these elements. I think we need to work harder. That perseverance, we can't give up that easy. Our goals are likely to be stronger, tougher, higher. So it's extremely important to choose the right goals. And one excellent book, while the intention is not to market the book, one excellent topic is to think about the why, right? And there are two whys. One is, why are you choosing to do this? And secondly, why do you think you will succeed in that? Very, very important for you to get these two answers. If you can't put that answer on paper, believe me, in life, it's going to be even more difficult to achieve. If you are able to see that answer on paper or feel that answer in you, there is a fair chance that you might be able to succeed. And even that doesn't have to be a straight path. All of you must have seen so many caricatures of how life is for all of us. So it's not a straight path of hard work, it's a zigzag, right? And therefore, it is very important for us to use an iterative process. So if you think this is your goal, you think this is what it means to get or achieve your goal, be open to validating that. Be open to iterating that, right? So an iteration would mean that, okay, if I did this, it will work, right? If I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and study, I may be able to do more, for example, right? Or if I, create my own notes and keep it, it would be easy for me to read during the exam as compared to marking on, a textbook or a notebook that already has the material and then studying. So these are your assumptions. Please validate that. Please make sure, iterate it. Get feedback in case you need to get feedback about your own self, your performance, your potential, etc. Refine it and then move forward. Please do this on a very, very regular basis. The second one, network and collaborate, very, very self-explanatory. I think we are all future professionals, if not already current. We should be out there, we should be learning, we should be sharing, and we should be building our personal brand. Please do it in the most appropriate manner and make sure that you create the right network for yourself, whom you can collaborate with and depend on in the future, right? And that's virtual. There is something called meetups. I don't know how many of you know this. Every location, every topic, there are meetups. Typically, startup founders use this, but I think it is okay for non-startups also to join some of these meetups. The topic that you are interested in, the area that you're setting up your goals, please use these meetups. And these meetups are physical meetings that are conducted typically on a Saturday, right? So you spend that 1 or 2 hours, meet up with people uh, who are your peers, and quickly get validations for what you're thinking. You think that this is the area of the future, right? Now you're going to ask your parents, you're going to ask your friends, they may or may not know. There could be people who are already working on that, right? And you go and meet them and you ask them, and they'll tell you, you know what, I also thought that this is what it is, but if you do A, B, and C, it will not work. You probably need to add a D or drop a B, right? And then you will know how it works. Time management and personal IP management, very, very, very important, right? There has to be something unique about you that cuts you, apart from the others. In the business world, we call it the secret sauce, which means why is an Udbeta better than its peers? What makes it different? What makes it stand out? Why will, X, Y, or Z, whoever you are on the call, be picked up instead of X1, Y1, Z1, right? What makes you apart? Try to find out what that USP of you is or what that difference is. Protect that, right? And make sure that that remains, right? And finally, if all of this doesn't work, you should be open to having a plan B that you will work out. I already talked about this in the earlier slide. The HBR article also talks about having a plan B, but it is equally important to pivot, right? So if you believe that this is not working for you, use the same skill set, use the same philosophy with which you set up the goal, uh, but probably change the direction, right? And move to something else. If you study successful businesses, if you study the best businesses of today, they are not what they started out to be, right? If all of you know, the Amazon that started out a few decades ago, was started only to buy books and sell books as an online retailer. Only buy and sell, buy in bulk and sell cheap, right? That's how Amazon started. That's not the Amazon we know today, right? So a lot of things start evolving, a lot of things start, moving as you gain experience, and that works equally well for your life. So please be open to pivots. And a pivot is basically a shift that you do in your direction because you know that your current path is probably not going to work out, right? With that, I end. Uh, I'm just going to, so this is something that I found very interesting, and I want to leave this thought with you. This is called a Future Skills Finder. It's an interactive map that allows you to understand what each of these components are. And in any kind of a career choice or work choice or your own venture choice that you make, some of these skill sets are going to be extremely important. So it's important to connect all of this and finally understand what skill sets you want to build for yourself. This is a very interesting map. It's from Germany, but it is also available in India in English. So what I've given you there are links to those maps and the text that suggests what this means, right? So please use these to hone your personal skills. That's going to help you in the future, right? With that, I thank you for the time and the extended time. And that's the end of my presentation. Very happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very much. Then, Dr. Ritika, just a
Yes, sir.
minute. It was such a rich discussion, Anand, that I'm not even attempting to summarize this. You have given us so much to think, read. I believe I'll take at least a month to go through all that. So much direction has been provided by you. But I'm looking forward to requesting you now itself. Please be available for part two of the discussions. We'll be in touch with you. The way life has changed quickly. In the past, we used to give couple of examples like have you done Colgate? Well, we would mean have you brushed your teeth? So Colgate had become synonym equivalent to brushing teeth. Or get this Xerox please, while we wanted to have a photocopy of the paper done. Today, I believe we are saying three words of the decade. And specifically, I'm talking of India, and I'm not talking of urban India, I'm talking of urban and rural India, India as a whole. Paytm कर दिया क्या? While
Correct.
we mean perhaps a digital transaction, not necessarily Paytm only, or scan कर दो जी, or the OTP. So three words of the decade, according to me. This is how the life has changed: Paytm, scan, and OTP. With this, thank you very much once again, and I hand it over back to Dr. Ritika.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this wonderful session. It has been greatly appreciated by the participants. And as Daman sir has rightly said, please do spare us some time for part two of the session because you have given us wonderful pointers over here. So this insightful session has obviously enlightened the participants about the real scenarios, how to overcome these challenges that are coming every day, and many questions have already been taken over by you, have been answered by you during your detailed talk. But yes, I have a one important question which even I would like to take up. India still remains diverse in terms of availability of resources, knowledge, and skills in many areas of the country till today. So, does this imply a doom for those on the weaker side of this availability in the upcoming years?
When you said those, you mean countries or you mean
No, we mean the
our
specific
own
areas of
employees?
the country and our own
Yes,
fellow
yes,
people
yes.
who are like on that particular, residing in that particular area.
Yes and no. Basically, what happens is, if you're an employee of a company, and we do hear about employees being asked to leave by companies nowadays. That never used to be the trend earlier, but there is a recognition, a moral and I would say a non-legal recognition that if certain skills of our colleagues are not meeting the requirements and they cannot be used anywhere else in the company, there is an obligation to reskill or upskill. And I think organizations who are very, you know, particular about helping their employees, especially those employees who help them during their growth period, I think they would take this up as an additional burden, responsibility on them, and would help them. And I think that that is going to be the trend, for Indian companies. I may not be able to say the same thing with conviction about MNC companies because they think with their mind. and Indian companies still think with their heart, I would say. So for the good or not for the good, but they definitely think with their heart. So the point that I was trying to say about why India is different is India is a billion, 1.14 billion, big and large. It will be the largest consumer for India. So even if we have zero exports, right, provided we are in a position to, have the consumers able to buy, we will never go out of business, right? And that's not true with the other geographies, right? There are certain geographies where they've gone down because they've not been able to. There's no source of income for them. And India, the biggest advantage is even if there is a challenge with the other countries for political reasons or for economic reasons, India will still be a very large consumption driving economy, and therefore we will not go out of jobs in general, right? But how fast and how quickly we are able to get there and get the benefit of the demographic dividend is all in our hands, combined hands, right? So there's no one person involved. I think that's how I would answer your question, Dr. Ritika.
Thank you, sir. Very rightly said. So, with this, we come to an end to this wonderful session, but not before we actually thank our experts for today. I would have generally invited Professor M.N. Huda, sir, our respected director, sir, initiator of this series, Director, Bharati Vidyapeeth Institute of Computer Applications and Management, as well as Executive Vice Chairperson, IEEE Delhi Section. But due to an emergency today, sir is unavailable. So on his behalf, I would like to present this certificate for today's session to Anand, sir. Sir, thank you so much for this wonderful and I would say enlightening session today. It has motivated all our participants on how to keep themselves, I would say, adaptable as well as stay in market in the present times in the current changing scenario. So thank you so much for this wonderful session. Daman sir, once again, a great thank you to you because you have always been a mentor to us in all these sessions of BVI, IEEE, IET, BVICAM technical lecture series. So
My
thank you, sir,
pleasure.
for always being the guiding source.
My pleasure.
And
Thank you very
we
much.
also have a small e-memento because it's all technical nowadays. So with the technical diversions, we have also switched over to technical things. So there is a small e-memento. I'll also like to share the same. Once again, thank you, Anand
Great.
sir, for
Thank
this
you.
wonderful session. And thank you to Daman sir again for being a luminary in guiding us and making this session possible today. So
Thank you
thank
very
you,
much.
sir. Thank you once again.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot to everyone.